Der auch Unternehmer ist und zu dem, der Abfeier gehabt vor einiger Zeit, und damals hatten wir den, wo es eine Grundlage gibt und das ist genau die Unterbereitung.
Aus dem politischen Berlin kann ich nichts über Frankfurt, es lebt es auch ohne ich.
Aber das Interessante ist, dass es vielfältige Beziehungen sind.
So. Es wird ruhiger und wir können langsam beginnen. Wir sollten heute auch, das machen wir ja immer bei der Montagsgesellschaft, dass wir etwas auf die Uhr schauen, dass wir nicht allzu lange ausufern. Aber heute müssen wir ganz, ganz streng auf die Uhr schauen, weil Herr Botschafter Schmidt noch den Zug nach Berlin erreichen muss. Insofern müssen wir so fertig werden, dass Herr Botschafter Schmidt um Punkt 20 vor 8 loslaufen kann, dass er dann irgendwie 10 Minuten, Viertelstunde später am Hauptbahnhof ist. Also das ist die Vorgabe. Wir sind sehr, sehr froh, dass wir als Montagsgesellschaft ein weiteres Mal in Code Frankfurt zu Gast sein dürfen. Es ist eine ganz besondere Ehre für uns, dass wir hier so mitten im Herzen sein dürfen. Das passt ja zu uns als Frankfurter Initiative. Und bevor ich jetzt eine kurze Begrüßung spreche, würde ich das Wort an den Hausherrn, an den Gastgeber geben, Herrn Dr. Böning, der Geschäftsführer von Code Frankfurt ist und uns mit Sicherheit 2, 3 Sätze zu Code sagen kann. Soweit ich informiert bin, besteht sogar die Möglichkeit, dass man im Nachhinein nochmal durch die Räumlichkeiten gehen kann. Danke, dass wir hier sein dürfen.
So. Vielen Dank. Ich stelle mich mal so ein bisschen nach hinten, dass ich Ihnen nicht den Rücken zukehre. Begrüße Sie ganz herzlich. Ich bin heute nicht die bedeutendste Person, das bin ich im Leben ohnehin nicht, aber zumindest gibt es heute einige wichtige Persönlichkeiten, mit denen Sie das Vergnügen haben, eine Diskussion zu führen und Informationen auszutauschen. Ich würde Sie ganz gerne im Namen von Code begrüßen, das heißt im Namen der 3 Geschäftsführer. Das ist der Herr Dr. Hakimi, der im Moment nicht da sein kann. Das ist Herr Wein und das bin ich selbst. Wir 3 als Geschäftsführer führen diese Company, wo Sie jetzt hier gerade sitzen. In den Räumen wird normalerweise etwas ganz anderes gemacht, aber Sie sehen, man kann es umwandeln und Sie haben die Möglichkeit, hier eine entsprechende Diskussion zu führen. Wir sind eigentlich, und das würde ich Sie gerne wissen lassen, wir sind eigentlich ein Ärztezentrum, ein medizinisches Gesundheitszentrum und ich bin dabei, obwohl ich gar kein Arzt bin, sondern Psychologe. Und das charakterisiert so etwas das Grundverständnis dieser ganzen Veranstaltung, dass nämlich eine ganzheitliche diagnostische und ärztlich-medizinische Betreuung angeboten wird zu den verschiedenen Themen. Und wir haben hier die Möglichkeit, mit etwa 30 Fachärzten, davon etwa 13, 14 Professoren, verschiedene medizinische Fachrichtungen zu vertreten. Und wenn diagnostische Leistungen verlangt werden oder auch Behandlungen, dann können sie in den Händen der verschiedenen Personen an einem Ort einfach hier aufgenommen werden. Ich selbst habe eine merkwürdige Funktion. Ich bin nicht nur Psychologe hier, sondern habe die Aufgabenstellung in meiner Hauptaufgabe als Geschäftsführer, die Zusammenarbeit zwischen den Ärzten und den Patienten zu verbessern. Sie können sich vorstellen, das ist eine nicht ganz einfache Aufgabenstellung. Es gibt Leute, die behaupten, wenn ihnen das gelingt, dann hätten sie eigentlich einen Nobelpreis verdient. Und an diese Zielsetzung arbeite ich. Was wir auch machen, ist eben nicht nur Medizin, nicht nur Psychologie, nicht nur Physiotherapie, nicht nur Sport und Fitness. Wir machen das, was wir heute Abend machen, nämlich Veranstaltungen. Das hat den Hintergrund, dass wir eine gewisse gesamtgesellschaftliche Verpflichtung empfinden, die bedeuten, nicht nur Werbung für Code zu machen, sondern mit den Räumlichkeiten, die wir hier haben, auch die Möglichkeit zu bieten, Veranstaltungen zu machen, die tatsächlich dazu führen, wichtige gesellschaftliche Fragestellungen zu erörtern. Und deswegen würde ich Sie gerne nicht lange hindern. Sie haben ein knappes Zeitbudget. Sie haben wichtige Persönlichkeiten, die ich auch nochmal ganz herzlich begrüßen möchte und möchte alle begrüßen. Wünsche Ihnen einen anregenden Abend, eine gute Diskussion und suchen Sie sich irgendjemanden, den Sie ein bisschen fertig machen können. Ich wünsche Ihnen viel Vergnügen.
Ja, vielen Dank, Dr. Uwe Böning. Vielen Dank, dass wir erneut hier zu Gast sein dürfen. Und Herr Dr. Böning hat etwas gemeinsam mit vielen anderen hier im Raum. Herr Dr. Böning ist auch aktives Mitglied des Vereins Montagsgesellschaft. Ich würde mich freuen, wenn der ein oder andere heute Abend sich auch für eine Mitgliedschaft bei uns entscheidet, dass wir diese Aktivitäten, die wir hier jeden Monat vollziehen, solche Veranstaltungen umzusetzen, dass wir das auch gemeinschaftlich gut hinkriegen. Wir haben jetzt gesprochen, Herr Baki-Irmak macht die Moderation. Es gibt ja eine kleine Initiative, die sich 400 Minutes nennt. 400 Minutes, wer weiß, warum sie so heißt? Also ich sehe, Sie sind nicht so gut vorbereitet, weil es gibt eben seit heute, beziehungsweise seit gestern Nachmittag eine Internetseite, 400minutes.de, können Sie drauf schauen. Es dauert genau, wie wir alle wissen, 400 Minuten, um von Frankfurt nach Lagos zu fliegen und natürlich auch den anderen Weg zurück. Und das ist der Brückenschlag zwischen Lagos und Frankfurt. Und das ist das Thema, was wir heute Abend diskutieren werden. Wir haben bei der 10-Jahresfeier der Montagsgesellschaft im Römer in Anwesenheit von Herrn Oberbürgermeister Feldmann bereits einen Afrika-Schwerpunkt gehabt. His Excellency Mr. Tuga war unser Gast bei dieser Veranstaltung in Vertretung von der Frankfurter Legende JJ Okocha. Alle Fußballfans kennen ihn und alle Frankfurter sowieso. Und damals haben wir, ich sehe da hinten Begeisterung, und damals haben wir die Forderung ausgesprochen, erstmals Frankfurt und Lagos zusammenzurücken und haben damals gesagt, das langfristige Ziel ist anzustreben, dass eine Städtepartnerschaft zwischen Lagos und Frankfurt stattfindet, beides wichtige Finanzplätze. Und gerade im Zuge des Brexit, wo vielleicht die Bedeutung von London etwas abnimmt, London ist sehr eng mit Lagos, gerade im Zuge dessen haben wir die Forderung ausgesprochen, dass man daran arbeitet. Die Initiative hat sich jetzt weiterentwickelt in den letzten Monaten und jetzt haben wir 400 Minutes gegründet als Initiative von Keep the World Foundation. Das ist eine bürgerliche, gesellschaftliche Organisation und eben der Montagsgesellschaft. Und wir sind verschiedene Initiatoren, die heute Abend mit dabei sind und an der Initiative arbeiten. Wir haben eine Veranstaltung und ich muss jetzt mich selbst ein bisschen zügeln, weil wir haben gleich noch das Grußwort eines Mitstreiters der Initiative, dem Stadtverordnetenvorsteher Stefan Siegler, dem ersten Bürger der Stadt Frankfurt. Und jetzt mache ich gerade die Vorstellung, Stefan, und dann gebe ich das Wort an dich. Die Vorstellung, wie schon gesagt, Stefan Siegler, Stadtverordnetenvorsteher, ist Mitstreiter in der Initiative 400 Minutes, setzt sich aktiv stark dafür ein, von der politischen Seite, dass diese Städtepartnerschaft zwischen Lagos und Frankfurt mittelfristig umgesetzt wird. Lieber Stefan Siegler, schön, dass du dabei bist. Herzlich willkommen. Wir haben, ja, großer Applaus. Wir haben sozusagen das Brain der nigerianisch-deutschen Verbindungen, ein starker Treiber innerhalb der ganzen Konstellation, Dr. Jeremy Gaines, der mir vor einiger Zeit berichtet hat, wie schwierig es geworden ist, ein kurzfristiges Flugticket von Lagos nach Frankfurt und umgekehrt zu bekommen. Das war vor einiger Zeit noch viel, viel einfacher und ich fand das total exemplarisch dafür, dass ich gemerkt habe, oder da findet was statt. Also wenn die Verkehrswege ausgebucht sind, da scheint breites Interesse an einer Verbindung zu sein. Und das fand ich, wie gesagt, sehr, sehr überzeugend. Dr. Jeremy Gaines als Head of the Initiative 400 Minutes, schön, dass du da bist. Herzlich willkommen. Christian Hiller von Gärtringen, der links neben Jeremy Gaines sitzt, ist Unternehmer, ist Berater, hat ein Unternehmen, Africa Partners, Entschuldigung. Wir haben vorhin schon drüber gesprochen. Er war früher Journalist bei der Frankfurter Allgemeinen Zeitung, Frankfurter Allgemeinen Sonntagszeitung und hat eine Frau aus Afrika, ist eng privat verbunden nach Afrika, aber eben auch geschäftlich sehr, sehr eng verbunden und macht Geschäftsbeziehungen zwischen Afrika und Deutschland, insbesondere Nigeria ist ein Schwerpunkt und er ist von Anfang an bei der Initiative mit dabei und ein absoluter Experte. Jetzt habe ich natürlich den protokollarischen Fehler gemacht, dass ich die Exzellenzen nicht zuerst aufgerufen habe, sondern, tut mir leid, jetzt zum Abschluss, das war wegen Herrn Ziegler, hatten wir da von Frankfurt aus sozusagen angefangen. Wir sind sehr, 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 sehr froh, Herr Botschafter Schmidt, Sie sind Subsahara-Beauftragter der Bundesregierung im Rang eines Botschafters. Sie sind absoluter Afrika-Experte, kennen in Afrika sozusagen jede Ecke. Wir haben uns vor einem halben Jahr hier in Frankfurt getroffen und habe Ihnen davon erzählt, dass wir vorhaben, diese Veranstaltung zu machen, dass wir vorhaben, diese Initiative zu starten und Sie haben kurzerhand gesagt, selbstverständlich bin ich dabei und haben den weiten Weg von Berlin kurzfristig auf sich genommen, hierher zu kommen, fahren heute Abend auch wieder nach Berlin zurück. Deswegen, wie gesagt, müssen wir etwas auf die Uhr schauen. Schön, dass Sie da sind, Herr Botschafter Schmidt. And this was probably my last word in German, because now we shift into English. And welcome back to Frankfurt, His Excellency Ambassador Tuga. He's ambassador of Nigeria in Germany. He also came all the way from Berlin to Frankfurt in order to support our initiative, in order to be here tonight to discuss how Frankfurt and Lagos, Nigeria can move closer together. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for your support. Very welcome, very warm welcome to His Excellency Mr. Tuga. Und jetzt gebe ich an der Stelle doch nochmal auf Deutsch eine Begrüßung für den Stadtverordnetenvorsteher der Stadt Frankfurt, Herrn Stefan Ziegler.
Nee, wir hatten ausgesagt, wir machen es auf Englisch. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear representatives of the Montagsgesellschaft and Keep the World Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, and of course Dr. Böing for giving us the opportunity to be here at this very, very nice place. Let me start by conveying you the best greetings on behalf of the City Parliament of Frankfurt. As President of the City Council, it's a pleasure for me to support the work of the Montagsgesellschaft and the initiative 400 Minutes concerning the relations between Frankfurt and Lagos. And therefore, I'm very happy about being invited to today's panel discussion and having the chance to speak to you. Thank you very much. Today's event is carried out under the theme Building Bridges, with the objective of strengthening the relations between Frankfurt and Lagos, developing them to a real partnership. Furthermore, the discussion gives us the possibility to reflect on the question, how can we achieve a relationship with Black Africa that is based on eye level? Nigeria is called the giant of Africa, not only because of its football team, but of your economic strength and potential. And Lagos is the hidden capital of Nigeria. Frankfurt and Lagos have very much in common. Our cities have an international character with inhabitants from all over the world. Lagos is the place to be for the African headquarters of German companies, as Frankfurt is as the host for the European headquarters of the international companies. We are the financial centers of our nations and as a result of the Brexit of our continents. We are the main fare location of our nations and our continents. We have the most frequented airports in our nation, and we are connected, as we heard it, by direct flights of Lufthansa and DHL. Never forget the parcel services, which are a real deep connection between the cities and the continents. We should look at the political frame. Chancellor Angela Merkel visited Nigeria in 2011. In 2015, the new elected President Buhari's first visit outside Africa was the G7 summit at Elmau in southern Germany. 2016, Federal Foreign Minister Steinmeier visited Nigeria. Last year, the president of the Nigerian Senate, Dr. Bukola Saraki, visited Berlin. He talked about the efforts Nigeria was making towards closer bilateral economic and commercial ties with Germany. He lauded the Germans for their sincerity to work with Nigeria. So it's the time to tie the relations between Lagos and Frankfurt. You have good friends of Lagos with Klaus Fassold, Jeremy Gaines and Baki Irmak here in Frankfurt who promoted the initiative 400 Minutes with the Montagsgesellschaft and Keep the World Foundation. In the past months we had many conversations and I'm happy that in 2 weeks or a little bit later we get to practical. Frankfurt is proud of hosting an official Nigerian high-level delegation consisting of representatives of the city of Lagos. The visit is intended as a platform to discuss the common challenges at urban development. The central themes will be ensuring municipal energy and water supplies, handling waste disposal, establishing a fresh food cooling chain. I'm really looking forward to this exchange and hope it will strengthen our friendship and help you achieve your goals. Now I'm curious about the discussion in keeping with the motto building bridges. I'm sure this is the start of an excellent relation between Lagos and Frankfurt. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ein letztes Wort auf Deutsch. Alle, die heute Abend hier sind, werden die Möglichkeit haben, über den YouTube-Channel der Montagsgesellschaft die Veranstaltung nochmal als Film zu sehen. Unsere Mitglieder der Montagsgesellschaft, Herr und Frau Lieverz, filmen die Veranstaltung heute und es wird einen Film geben über die Seite der Montagsgesellschaft, über den YouTube-Channel dann abrufbar und wir freuen uns, dass Faszination, Vision, Film das Unternehmen der beiden Partner der Montagsgesellschaft ist und sie begleiten zukünftig viele Veranstaltungen von uns mit einem Filmbeitrag, dass wir ein bisschen auch Bewegtbild ins Internet reinbekommen. So, jetzt übergebe ich an den Moderator der Veranstaltung, der schon jetzt den Platz von Herrn Ziegler eingenommen hat. Baki Irmak is going to do the moderation tonight and he is sort of the strongest or one of the strongest founders of our initiative 400 Minutes. Baki, vielen Dank.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Welcome everybody. The introduction is done. I think we can start directly into the discussion. It's a great pleasure to have Ambassador Tuga and Ambassador Schmidt here with us today. And I think before we start with the discussion, let's get to know Nigeria and who is better than the ambassador of Nigeria to Germany to tell us what actually makes Nigeria significant in Africa. What's the particular role of Nigeria, and probably if everyone leaves today, what does everyone need to know actually about Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure if I were to go through the sort of usual stuff you get to hear about Nigeria, that it's the largest nation in Africa, it has a population of 180 million, it's the largest economy, $500 billion GDP. I'm pretty sure quite a few of you have heard, if not all of you, have heard that said about Nigeria. So I'd rather not dwell so much on that, but rather I would rather speak about the enterprising spirit of Nigerians, which I believe they have in common with the city of Frankfurt, and specifically Lagos is like Frankfurt, a city founded on that enterprising spirit, that laissez-faire spirit that drives the business people that have resided in what is today called Lagos, before then was called Echo for so many centuries. Now, Nigeria is at a period when it is diversifying its economy. We have a robust plan referred to as the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. At the center of that, you have the city of Lagos with a special economic zone in the Lekki Peninsula where a lot of interesting things are happening. There is a huge refinery that is to be commissioned in 2019. Within the special economic zone, you have a textile and garment hub that is being created. You have an ICT hub also being set up, and numerous other things. There's a deep sea port also that is going to be under construction soon. There's an airport, a cargo airport for DHL to fly directly into Lekki Peninsula that is also coming up. So now is as good a time as ever for this linkage that we're trying to forge, and that the private sector is already forging anyway between Lagos and Frankfurt. Now is the time for us to support it so that we'll unleash all that potential. And you know, you have to bear in mind that this thing has been going on, I would say, you know, for 150 years. These linkages, this is not the first time that, you know, these linkages are being thought of, because I'll tell you what, 150 years ago exactly, to the year, a gentleman by the name of Frederick Gerhard Rolf set out from a place, I think about 4 hours away from here, and crossed the Mediterranean, crossed the Sahara Desert, and went all the way to Lagos. And today, you know, I would say it's serendipitous that we're sitting here discussing, you know, this linkage. So it's about time. I think I'll stop there because I don't know how much time I have. I missed the German part. You know, my German is still not, you know, as fluent as I would like it to be.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure there will be a lot of questions on a couple of topics we touched. Ambassador Schmidt is probably one of the most profound experts of German-African relationships. Can you please give us a quick overview about the bilateral relationships between Nigeria and Germany, and how these has evolved over the last couple of years?
Thank you very much, and sorry for the disappointment. I'm neither an expert on African affairs or on Africa, because I think it takes a lifetime to be an expert. And just look at the diversity of cultures, languages, geographical spaces. I think the only thing that goes in my favor is I have a lot of curiosity in me, and that should be the one thing also in this partnership. Be curious, go out there, see what's happening. Don't trust what you see in the media, but experience things for yourself. Sorry for that. I like the number 400. I give you another number. We've been sitting here together for about half an hour, and in this half an hour, 40 people moved to Lagos, roughly. That doesn't sound like a lot, but if you sort of extrapolate it, you come out with about 2,000 per day. And then if you extrapolate that every day, there are other numbers who are about 3,000. I wonder how these people arrive, where they're counted, but just to see how can a city deal with that. And we were talking about formality and informality and laissez-faire. Now, we're very much used in Germany to very strict rules and regulations. I think what we can learn if we go to Lagos and other places is how the informal sector deals with problems. And people do it themselves because they know that they cannot rely exclusively on the state, to be mild. Some others would put it in a much more critical way. And I think there's a lot to be learned. Now, I haven't answered your question about German-Africa relations, so I'll finish with German-Nigerian relations. Lagos is in a class of its own. I always call it a planet Nigeria, and it's also a planet Lagos. So we do see the importance just from the sheer numbers. But there's more than just the importance in numbers. We see the regional importance of Nigeria. We see it playing a constructive role in the region. If Nigeria catches a cold, the whole region, if it sneezes, the whole region catches a cold. So we need definitely Nigeria to be on track. Now, that's not for us to decide. It's for Nigerians themselves to decide. I remember in 2015, we were really nervous about the presidential elections. And at the end of the day, Nigerians did it. They did it. They had just an election despite all the really contentious issues, and we'll have another elections in 2019. Again, if you zoom in on the country, you zoom in on the different states, and each state is an ecosystem by itself, and the diversity is just sheer staggering. So Nigeria is important, and let me go one step back. Africa is important I've been in this job now for almost 4 years, and I worked before with President Köhler, also with this partnership on Africa with Africa Initiative, and I'm glad that there's such a strong interest in Africa on the one hand, but I'm also very acutely aware that most of the trigger is migration. And if we now look at Africa policy just as a policy to limit migration, then I think we're missing the boat on many things. I think we should see it's a tragedy what happens in the desert, in Libya, and also in the Mediterranean, and also when you come up to Europe, it's a tragedy what happens. We need to find better ways to address it. But if we limit our interest in the African continent, only in that, I think we're missing a big opportunity. And if we have a partnership, and stronger partnership between institutions, people to people, I think we have a good chance to maybe do much better and learn more from each other.
Thank you very much. And Ambassador Schmidt mentioned the transition of power, I think, which was very impressive how it worked, and there was not much press coverage, actually, as usually. When something went very well, like the transition of power, actually there is no much noise, but otherwise it's on the spotlight again. Jeremy, you are long-lasting, I don't use the word expert now anymore, friend, consultant in Nigeria. And you know the country since 25 years, so how do you see, from the view, from the perspective of a foreign investor or an expert, how the country actually evolved and how it's actually perceived nowadays?
I think the 25 years is apposite, because when I first went to Nigeria, it was in the death throes of a dictatorship. And since then, it has changed fundamentally. It's just amazing how 25 years can make a country or enable a country to change that much. If you go to Lagos now, you just arrive at an international airport, you hire a car or you hire a driver, and you go to your hotel and you do your business. And that is something that we don't have as a perception of Lagos. We don't have an idea. Our ideas of Lagos and perhaps of Nigeria, West Africa, I don't know, Ambassador Schmidt will know that better than myself. There are ideas that are very much out of date and very much have to do with how the media shows us images of Africa or of Nigeria that bear no resemblance to the realities. The realities of Lagos, like Frankfurt, is a city connected by bridges. Lagos, like Frankfurt, is the place where the kings used to be voted. Lagos, like Frankfurt, is a free city-state. There are any number of similarities, it's just a lot bigger than Frankfurt. Like an awful lot bigger. That doesn't mean to say its significance for the economy is unlike the significance of Frankfurt. They're very, very similar. And I think the main thing that I find going to Nigeria nowadays is there isn't much of a difference between the two places in terms of ease of doing business, how I do business, the networks you need in order to do business, or for that matter, the normal cultural life you have. I think in those 25 years, Nigeria has changed fundamentally and radically, and what hasn't changed is how we see it. Because we got stuck somewhere in the past, and we need to bring ourselves into the present if we are, as Ambassador Schmidt said, to notice what the opportunities are for bringing peoples together, or bringing people or friends or companies together.
Thank you, Jeremy. Christian, so we are less talking about actually broader Africa these days, more about particular topics, particular countries, or like today about city partnership. So are we on the right direction to foster a business and trade relationship with Africa?
You know, we tend to be a little bit complacent towards Africa. We think that we Germans should involve ourselves in African affairs for doing charity, but that's not the matter. We can do it if we want to, but it's much more about having normal political and economic relations. This can englobe development, but if we go there for digging water holes, we do not see all the infrastructure we can invest in roads, in telecommunication, in seaports, in airports, in railways, in cement factories, and so on. So our development perspective hides a little bit all the opportunities we have in Africa. And it's not all about widows and orphans, and so there are many people who are very successful, who are living normal lives, and so we have to change our perspective we have on Africa. We shall not forget all the misery that's there, but we should also have a look at what's moving there. And Africa is the fastest moving continent on Earth. It's moving much faster than Asia or Latin America or North America. It's the only continent where we still have a population growth. African population will double in the next 30 years, and it will double again in the next 50 years. And that's a challenge for Africa. You have to manage that population growth, but it's also a big opportunity, because every child that comes on Earth needs clothes, housing, education, jobs, and so on. So, and we should take this opportunity.
Thank you, Christian. So we founded this initiative, 400 Minutes, to bring Lagos and Frankfurt closer together, to strengthen the ties. And of course, we had a couple of discussions on this topic before. There were a couple of initiatives. But we think that there is a particular good match in this case, actually, with Frankfurt and Lagos. And Ambassador Tuga is a great supporter of this initiative, and thank you for that. Can you tell us from your perspective what is actually the match between Frankfurt and Lagos?
The match, I would say, is the strong work ethic that exists in both cities. You know, the people are highly driven. There's a misconception or a generalization sometimes about Africa. You tend to hear a lot about African time. When you're late, they say, oh, African time. And when you're punctual, that's German time, I guess. But you see, it is a misconception, because if you go down to Isaleko, that's in the heart of Lagos, the Lagos Island proper, and you have an appointment with a market woman who owns 25 or 50 shops, and that appointment is for 10 o'clock in the morning, she's going to be there at 9:30, maybe even 9 o'clock. So in terms of punctuality, in terms of that culture of precision when it comes to the private sector and private enterprise, and just like Dr. Gaines had mentioned earlier, the fact that the two cities were built on on private capital, on that can-do spirit, means that, you know, that is still there, you know. So, but there's often, you know, the mistake of conflating maybe the lackadaisical attitude, if you will, of public sector sometimes, which exists almost everywhere. You know, there's inertia. You know, I shouldn't be saying this, I'm a government official now, but, you know, you tend to find that the bureaucracy, you know, creates a lot of inertia, whereas, you know, with the private sector, you know, there's more efficiency in time management. So that exists, and because of that, there's a lot of potential. I only spoke about the special economic zone that is being built, and that finance, global finance is being sourced for all over the world, you know, and that I think, you know, that perfect match with Frankfurt is there to be utilized. You've got Eco-Atlantic that has also been created. The infrastructure is there. It's just looking for investment. And then, of course, also all that capital that is being created within Lagos itself is looking to be invested. So it's a two-way thing. It's not a one-way thing. You know, the two would complement each other, would augment each other, and I know that Frankfurt at the moment is positioned to absorb a lot of the finance and the financial institutions that I hear are leaving other parts of Europe, you know, that may no longer be part of the EU and are looking for somewhere else to relocate. And I know when you look at Frankfurt, you know, that magnetism that probably lies beyond, you know, within the Twin Tower over there, might be, you know, that tower might be more magnetic than the metal frame that might be in the center of another European city.
Jeremy told me that Lagos has actually no city partnership with any European city. And why is that actually? Is that because the concept of the city partnership is not common in Nigeria, or what's the reason for that?
Well, yes, it's not something that has really caught on, so to speak. It's not been, it doesn't have people like you and me working on it, put it that way.
Thank you. Ambassador Schmidt was the architect of the Africa Forum. I hope this is the right label now. When President Köhler served as president of Germany. And one of the goals was to establish strategic partnerships that last. So how do we make sure that this kind of initiatives and partnerships are actually sustainable?
Well, I had the privilege to work for President Köhler, who was, as you can see now, a bit ahead of his time. Because many things that we're thinking about now, if you look at the old speeches, it was said 10 years ago. Like we had a first wave of people going onto small boats and going to the Canary Islands. And so there's a lot of things that you go back and it was not the first time. How can we make sure that we really are in a lasting, or we enter a new sense of recognition? I think recognition starts with knowing each other. And we've talked a lot about business partnerships, but to me the cultural dimension is very important. You start with like learning the other person's language. And the other person's language is, now I know a lifetime is limited, I'm always full of respect for the ease by which Africans in most of the countries, without any formal education, even the ones speak 3 or 4 different languages and deal with cultural differences, like we hear when there's a problem, but we don't hear about the day-to-day peaceful coexistence in societies. So it starts with like learning from each other. I think it starts also with being honest about each other and saying, look, this is our interest, and the partner then says, this is my interest. And this is how a good relationship works, in respect. And then you find a compromise.
And I think it starts from our point of view, what was said before, is look to move beyond this logic of here's a partner that needs our financial assistance, because yes, there might be ideas where we have better knowledge when you come to Frankfurt and Lagos, urbanization, how you do this and that. But I think Frankfurt people will realize very quickly that there's so much knowledge in a place like Lagos, how to deal with the numbers that are just mentioned, then to me, a true partnership is like, if you look at the problem as something exterior, you sit next to your partner and you say, this is our problem, how do we deal with that? But that requires a very different mindset, and I hope that we get to go to this mindset from the German point of view.
Thank you very much. I don't see Stefan Süngen. Stefan, I think in the interest of time, I turn to the audience, and since Ambassador Schmidt has to leave soon.
We've got
so
30 minutes left.
Yes, sure, but
Very good.
Are there any questions from the audience? No questions yet? Okay. Yeah, there's one question. Yeah. There is a microphone, but I think, sure, you're vocal.
Maybe just stand up and...
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and I think it's an interesting project. What I'm taking for now of it is, can you please define more about the partnership? What are the legal opportunities of a partnership between cities? I have not really understood what, on what kind of basis do you plan some activities? Is it only on a financial basis or on a cultural basis? What kind of projects do you have as an idea for now? I mean, it's more, please be more concrete about your plans.
Perfect, it's an excellent question, and we have the first citizen of Frankfurt, so Stefan, over to you.
Frankfurt has a lot of sister cities all over the world in different statuses of this sister city thing. We've learned that establishing such a partnership is much easier if it's founded on an engagement of the people, plus the universities, plus schools, plus economy, so that we want to start this by the basis of the people at this point. We've made not so good experiences with starting it with the city-to-city partnership and then establishing all that, because if you want to have a working relationship, it has to live, and the bounds have to be between the two cities. And so we start to establish these bounds between the two cities as the first step, and as the second step, we are looking for the partnership of the administration of the cities. This is the idea what we have.
If I could just add briefly to that, I mean, every partnership has to start somewhere. And we decided that the place to start is the existing links between the two cities. And most of the existing links between the two cities are not visible. There's been a very long-standing tradition of the Frankfurt University being engaged in Lagos that nobody really in Frankfurt knows about. A lot of people in Lagos don't know about it. There are similarities. Lagos has always been the absolute center of the Nigerian newspaper industry. It's where all the brilliant journalists and all the big thinking journalists came from, just like Frankfurt was. But that gets lost, it doesn't get seen. It's just like if there are relationships between banks already, if there are relationships in Berlin now, because there's an incredible book scene in Lagos. Lagos is bustling with people writing books that we don't know about, we don't see, but we happen to be the place with the book fair. So how do you bring that together next? And all of those things have to be brought together by people. And the idea of a city partnership or twinning the two cities, as Stefan Ziegler correctly says, is something that is a formal act that brings the two administrations together. What we've tried to do so far is find where are these linkages already that are happening anyway on an ad hoc basis, and to bring them more together with each other, be it the universities, be it the banks, be it the construction companies, the medical companies,
where there already is interaction and say, you know, these people are doing it as well, pool your forces, and then we'll see whether we can't get the governments in some way to put their protective hand over it. We plan as the next thing we wish to do as 400 Minutes will be a Nigeria Day in Frankfurt in the autumn, just with culture. That will be music and fashion. Frankfurt has always been a textile city, but we forget Lagos is the fashion city in West Africa. And we think there's a natural match. Just like in Lagos, you have an incredible music scene. We know music here, but we don't know their music. We don't know that the origins of all high life music are there. They play it on every street corner. Why don't we get them over and see what we can do there? But that has to start on the basis of where are the linkages already. As Ambassador Schmidt said, you know, there are these things we learn from each other, but we just need to know what we already have. And Frankfurt as a city doesn't have an awareness of what we already have. We have a lived relationship. We're not going to do it, as Stefan Ziegler said, we're not going to make a partnership and then try and put a little life in it by asking someone, would you like to go to Lagos or would you like to come to Frankfurt? There are people moving all the time. We just have to get them to say what they're doing and to do it together. And you have to have in mind what having a sister city means. It doesn't mean a point on a list where you can say this continent is on my list. Having a sister city means a feeling that was with life. Yeah, and if there is life, and if you can improve that, then it's a real sister city relationship. This is what it's behind. It's not a list of trophies.
Stefan?
A question from His Excellency Mr. Schmidt, and maybe also Mr. Tugger. How safe is it in Lagos? Because I've talked to several people, we have talked to several people when we started the initiative in Frankfurt, and whenever we walked up to somebody, then the first answer was, oh, Nigeria, Lagos, that's very dangerous, we're not going to go there. Is it safe to be in Lagos, Nigeria, or is it very dangerous?
Easy question. Thank you. Something very interesting happened in Lagos between the years 1999 and 2007. There was a dispute, a fallout between the federal and the state government under the presidency of Olusegun Obasanjo. Now, this effectively led to the federal government in Abuja holding back funds that were meant for Lagos until, you know, certain legal issues had been resolved. Now, this had a very, very significant effect on Lagos. It meant that Lagos had to rest on, or to rely on, its internally generated revenue. It meant that it had to clean up the city. It meant that it had to improve security. It had to improve hygiene to make business more attractive, to make business more profitable, to allow taxpayers to feel more comfortable in paying taxes. So this significantly brought down the level of crime in Lagos. You know, as you'd expect and as you'd imagine, a city of 20 million people would definitely have some sort of crime. So I'm not trying to tell you that Lagos is 100% crime-free. I don't think there's any city in the world of that size, in fact, any city for that matter, that is crime-free. But compared to a lot of cities around the world, Lagos is very safe. And just like other cities, it depends on where you venture out. So chances are that, you know, as a businessman or a musician or an artist, a poet, visiting Lagos for one thing or the other, you're not likely to go to what would be considered the rough neighborhoods.
Seems there is another reason why Frankfurt and Lagos are a good match. Both have an issue with the perception that it's a very dangerous city.
Yeah, so dangerous that I walk to the train station from here. No, I think he's said almost a lot. I mean, you have to be careful wherever you are and with whomever you are and whatever signals you give, but this is something very universal in the world. So, and I think there's a perception gap. The first time I was in Lagos about 20 years ago, then it was, people were quite nervous when we moved around, and we had in the Consulate General, that was then the embassy, we had the dead bodies floating in the laguna, and people moved very quickly. All our staff had radio connection, they were making sure that things are okay, etc., etc. And these are people who are there and with all the protection and with the backing of the embassy, and this has changed a lot. So I would also advise you that don't be blue-eyed, be careful, but you would be careful anywhere, but don't be scared.
Thank you. Question in the audience?
As Stefan Ziegler mentioned, a city partnership needs to have activities among the people, not only among the politicians or the chiefs of the cities. So my question is, are there any initiatives reciprocally on the other side in Lagos? Is there an interest to have a partnership with Frankfurt? And who can we meet to bring it together?
Very good question.
I think Jerry can answer this question.
I'll take it first. Sure, we have deliberately, the website is also a Nigerian website. You can go on 400minutes.de or you can go on 400minutes.ng. There's just as much interest in Lagos as there is in Frankfurt. What we wanted to do at the civic level first was for Frankfurt to take the first sort of little tentative step and invite, as Stefan Ziegler said, we invited members of the administration in Lagos to come here to see how we do certain things, and we'll learn from them how they do certain things. But the whole idea is there is a strong interest in the business community and in the cultural community in coming here as well. It's an amazing thing. If you think, what is 400 minutes? It's probably trying to drive to Hamburg and getting stuck in Hanover. It's not far, but it's the perception of it is very far. I mean, I can see a few people here who I know from Lagos. I mean, Duke probably doesn't go to certain places, but he will tell you the interest in Lagos and Frankfurt is great the minute we start things. Lagos is incredibly fast. Lagos life is fast, the startups are fast, digitalization is fast. The minute someone notices something's happening, it happens. We wanted to have a logo made for the 400 Minutes website. The logo was made in Lagos. The amount of emails I got within the first 2 days was just horrific, because he was bang, 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 how should we do this? What do you want to do that? It's a very different way of looking at things. And as soon as a message is got out in some sort of form, I mean, Ambassador will tell you this, he made one telephone call, and then last night he was getting bombarded again. The question is going to be, will we be able to handle being overwhelmed by the interest, and how do we structure that, in my humble opinion?
Oh yeah, there's enthusiasm on the Lagos side as well. I was on the phone yesterday with the former governor of Lagos State, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as well as the current governor of Lagos State, and after that, I must have received about 4 or 5 other calls from aides, and But beyond the government side, you already have musicians coming to perform in Frankfurt anyway. So when you're talking about culture, you already have that interest. You have Nigerian, Lagos-based musicians coming to perform. I'm sure everybody here knows Fela, and God knows how many variations of Fela and Afrobeat have found their way to Frankfurt. So this is something, and not to talk of Nollywood. You know, Lagos is another. You know, the Nigerian movie industry is primarily centered around Lagos. So that is also there. Even before I got involved in this twinning effort, I was already engaged in dialogue centered around the Frankfurt Book Fair, because there were writers and printing houses on the Lagos side that were interested in featuring in the Frankfurt Book Fair, for example. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. I think another interesting linkage between Lagos and Frankfurt is the bustling startup scene. I mean, you have the tech quarter here in Frankfurt, which is quite famous in terms of fintechs, and obviously Lagos is a very, very big startup hub. So I'll be interested to know what you actually got planned, because another interesting thing is that Frankfurt has got a lot of capital, which Lagos doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the ideas behind the initiative. I mean, we have not only tech, but here we have the digital hub. We have 30,000 square meters now of co-working space in Frankfurt. There are a lot of companies coming to Frankfurt. We have the backbone of digitalization, actually, with D6. We have Europe's biggest data centers here in Frankfurt. And we know that Lagos offers actually a lot, and there is actually good access to money and to investors. And but there is a lot of innovation going on in Africa, and sometimes just because they don't start with all these legacy issues, we can see that in payment, where many companies there are far advanced. So that is definitely one of the ideas, actually, to connect also startups, investors.
Beyond that, if you remember, I mentioned the special economic zone, the Lekki special economic zone. There's an ICT hub that is being created there, beyond what already exists. Of course, I'm sure you know that Lagos is full of startups, and like he was mentioning, the fact that over the years, Nigeria was somehow gained notoriety, if you will, for letter writing from all sorts of what we refer to as 419. we have a very sophisticated banking system. The platforms that we have for mobile banking, for the IT aspect of banking, I think, is way ahead of anywhere in the world. I'm certain of that. So these are the sort of things that, with that symbiotic relationship, you tend to find that, businesses and financial institutions on this side would probably have, quite a bit to learn from the Nigerian side, and vice versa, of course.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Andreas Voss. I'm working for Deutsche Bank, actually in Lagos. So we have our rep office for West Africa and Sub-Sahara in Lagos. So on Friday I came from Lagos to Frankfurt, and I was very pleased to get this invitation. I just can say, if you really are familiarizing with the situation, you're surprised how many German-Nigerian business relationships are existing. So there is really a severe mismatch in regard to the perception. So there is a very active trade and interest and exchange. And I think there are so many pieces where Frankfurt and Lagos could work together, but I really ask you to come to Lagos and to spread this on a wider forum, because I'm sure you will get so many people supporting this initiative.
Thank you. Maybe first
Having the experts on the panel, there is the say that Europe, and thus Germany, is a little bit late seeing Africa as a chance because of the wide investments China has taken and India as well. How do you rate this as a fruitful competition for your country, or are there chances given as the gentleman preceding statement stated?
And maybe we take one more question.
I was wondering myself, considering sustainable development and the gain of importance it's getting, where you see the economic future of Lagos, considering the gain of, or the importance of the petroleum industry in the city, and maybe the end in short or long term of this resource.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think with investment opportunities by Asian and European businesses, I think there's a lot of room for collaboration, which is already happening naturally anyway, you know, because I've said this somewhere before. When you land in Lagos, you're landing in an airport that was built by Strabag, for instance. If you look to your, I think, left, you'll see there's another terminal being put up by an Asian company. When you drive down the road, you're probably driving down a Julius Berger road. So Nigeria has been facilitating Sino-German and Sino-European collaboration, for instance, you know, for many years. And there's still a lot of room to work together, to augment each other's skills and potentials, because, you know, there's nothing that says an Asian company that cannot do the earthworks in a project and a German Mittelstand or bigger would not be handling the electromechanicals, for instance. And increasingly what we're witnessing in a globalized world is that businesses themselves are global. They're not necessarily tied down to one country or the other. You know, so for instance, what is Julius Berger? Is it Nigerian or is it German? Or is it both? You know? So with regards to value addition, or sustainable development, what Nigeria, in the case of Nigeria, what we're trying to do is first and foremost to create an industrial base. You need an industrial base for it to be able to have sustainable development. And that's why you have made in Nigeria for exports special economic zones coming up, with 6 of them being fast-tracked around the world, one of which, around the country, one of which is the Lekki Lekki Special Economic Zone that I mentioned earlier.
Yes, I would like just to add some sentences to that. Yes, it's true, Africa was not waiting for the Europeans. They let in the Chinese, the Indians, Brazilian companies, Turkish companies, and so on. So Africa will move on, and for us, the only matter is, do we want to be part of the game, or do we want to stand apart and dig water holes? So that's the point. And the point we can make when we invest in Africa is just sustainability, to bring our European standards into construction business, into airport construction, and so on. So we really have to stress on sustainability, because that's where we can make the difference to Chinese or Indian proposals.
if I can add to that a little bit, I think some companies like Julius Berger and others, they have been a long time there, and Siemens is always proud of having a more than 100-year history on the African continent. So you have some of the actors who have been very successful, and some of them were not very happy or would not be delighted to share their successes with others. So I had the experience that some people say, oh, it's very difficult, don't come here, and then they themselves did quite well. But on a general level, I think it is something new. I mean, if you look at the 1990s, the opening of the fall of the wall, and there was so much economic engagement and interest into Eastern Europe. In the 1980s, it was the Asian miracles. It was China, it was Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. And there's only a certain size of like how many projects can be managed by a small and medium enterprise. So I'm optimistic, and I think we should wake up. We should just see it. And we have a good experience that we let companies and entrepreneurial risks being judged by business people. We cannot tell them. I very often have these conversations that, oh, Mr. Schmidt, why is Lufthansa flying here? And I can't pick up the phone and say, Lufthansa, you've got to fly here, there. And we've done well as a country. Others can do that. I mean, the Turkish airlines, I wonder what their business figures are. They fly everywhere. We're always confronted, why is Turkish flying here? I wonder sometimes about their balance sheets. The Chinese are also just humans. I mean, they're working in some very risky environments, but the Chinese have burned a lot of money in very difficult circumstances. It's only that some of their losses are being put down to the Exim Bank and others. So I'm comfortable with us not being the first, but I'm not comfortable with us not actually looking. And 2014, Ebola, a big setback. And I had people calling up my office and said, there's a conference in Nairobi, can I go there? That's Ebola. Now you're laughing. And I said, please get your map out of the world, and then you will realize that you're more in danger from the geographical destination here in Germany than in Nairobi. And it's this kind of basic knowledge that we really have to improve, and that's why I'm so adamant about it, like get out of the mentality of, oh, it's all needy. Yes, there's a lot of people who are in need, but it's not, we don't have the master plan to do this. I'm believing a lot in private interactions and people going there, experiencing it and then seeing, and that would really change, because that's then a different mentality. And the Lagosian spirit is something that we are very, it's amazing. It's amazing. People under very hard circumstances, they have the spirit and the will that they can do it. I wish lots of others have the same spirit. Because to come back to migration, if you're seeing how many people come to Europe, they're enormous risk takers. They take terrible risks. They take a lot of money and they take terrible risks. They risk their lives several times. Now imagine if we managed as a collective effort to have all that entrepreneurial ambition and drive and will to make life better to be put down in the country there. I mean, this would be such a change, but it needs a lot more of Lagosian spirit.
Thank you very much. I think we are finishing now with the official part. And I hope we convinced the audience and all people here that there is a need for this kind of initiative, and we are very happy and appreciate the support we have from Ambassador Tuga and Ambassador Schmidt. Thank you very much for coming and talking with us. Thank you very much, Jeremy and Christian. And with that, I ask Stefan to do the final words.
Okay, maybe I shift into German for the final word, für den letzten Aufruf an Sie. Ich weiß, dass einige Vertreter großer Unternehmen, auch Banken hier heute mit dabei sind. Wir haben jetzt mal diese 400 oder 400 Minutes Initiative gestartet aus dem Stand heraus, als Montagsgesellschaft, als Keep the World Foundation, und wir möchten die Connection between Lagos und Frankfurt intensivieren, und wir möchten die vielen Möglichkeiten, Opportunities, die sich ergeben, nutzen und aktivieren. Deswegen bitten wir Sie, wenn Sie die Möglichkeit haben, diese Aktivität auch zu unterstützen. Vielleicht gibt es die Möglichkeit, dass wir für Ihre Unternehmen eine Möglichkeit bieten, dass wir hier helfen, Netzwerk aufzubauen, Türen zu öffnen. Vielleicht gibt es von Ihrer Seite die Möglichkeit, das mit Manpower zu unterstützen, aber vielleicht gibt es auch die Möglichkeit, das mit ein paar Euro zu unterstützen. Wir verdienen damit kein Geld, das ist nicht der Anspruch, aber wir haben jetzt mal eine Website programmiert, wir müssen jetzt die Verbindungen aktivieren, wir müssen Reisen organisieren etc. Insofern sind wir dankbar, wenn wir hier von Ihrer Seite, wenn Sie die Möglichkeit haben, das mit einer Spende, mit einer Unterstützung, wenn Sie das begleiten können. Spende, Stichwort, es sind 2 gemeinnützige Organisationen, die dahinter stehen, die Keep the World Foundation und die Montagsgesellschaft, beides ehrenamtliche Initiativen und beide gemeinnützig. Insofern ist das Thema Spendenquittung keinerlei Problem. Netzwerk, Montagsgesellschaft, es gibt immer ein Buchpräsent am Ende, es gibt keine Honorare. Wir haben hier ein Buch gefunden, das ist die Connectography. Connectography is probably the English word for it. It's ein Buch auf Englisch und das ist das Buchpräsent für Sie als Dankeschön, dass Sie heute Abend mit dabei waren. Herzlichen Dank. Ich verteile gleich die Bücher. Noch ein ganz, ganz kurzer Werbeblock am Ende oder ein kleiner Forecast. Wir haben die nächste Veranstaltung, Sie bekommen eine Einladung, wir werden über die Verantwortung von Medien reden, wir werden über Fake News reden, wir werden einen Vertreter von Bertelsmann da haben, eventuell einen von Springer und wir werden uns mal mit Medien auseinandersetzen. Das ist die Thematik der nächsten Veranstaltung der Montagsgesellschaft. Werden Sie Mitglied der Montagsgesellschaft, unterstützen Sie uns, dass wir, so wie wir das hier jeden Monat machen, Veranstaltungen in dieser Form auf die Beine stellen. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Schauen Sie in die Medien, in die Zeitungen. Es ist Presse heute Abend auch mit dabei. Schauen Sie ins Internet, auf unsere Internetseite. Wir haben die komplette Veranstaltung gefilmt. Sie können sie sich also dann nochmal anschauen. Teilen Sie es auf Social Media. Spread the word. Und lassen Sie uns gemeinsam die Initiative 400 Minutes nach vorne bringen. Vielen Dank, dass Sie da waren. Ich sehe gerade noch mal den Hinweis, dass wir auch noch mal ein Dankeschön aussprechen an unsere Unterstützer aus Nigeria, die hier eine Musikdarbietung bringen, die es einleitend gemacht haben und die auch jetzt im Anschluss noch ein bisschen Musik machen. Das macht die Sache einfach harmonischer. Vielen Dank, dass Sie da sind. Und jetzt verabschieden wir Herrn Botschafter Schmidt und wir andere sind alle noch da und können noch das Networking in Bezug auf Nigeria, Germany, Frankfurt, Lagos intensivieren. Danke, dass Sie da sind.